Very good. All right. Well, thank you all for being here and for your interest in the Early Childhood Block Grant for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. We are going to review that RFP for this year. That was added to the RFP website on Friday. So that's available to you all now. And we will send out the slides and everything with the links, etc., to you all. But I'm assuming since you have registered for this webinar, you know where that website is. So thank you all for being here. We will get going here right now. All right, so eligible applicants are any 501c3 organizations in the state of Kansas, any Kansas County or city governments, and any unified school districts in the state of Kansas. Partnerships. So this is a grant that encourages partnerships, funded partners. So these may be partners that you would like sub-award ECVG grant funds to if you were awarded. And so those are organizations that may provide early childhood services on behalf of the organization that is applying or was funded with ECBG funds. And then non-funded partners are organizations and or providers in the community that the grantee or the applying organization will provide early childhood services to. So this is like if you are going to provide, if you apply to provide support to home-based or center-based childcare centers, those childcare centers would be your non-funded partners. There is a required collaborative agreement that we ask that if you are partnering with anybody, if you're applying to partner with anybody for this grant, that you complete and fill out. It is a fillable PDF. You are required to use the template provided. I'm not going to show it to you today, but it's linked here in the slides. It's also linked on the website and in the RFP. So that is the template that is required to be used. It is basically just saying if you are partnering with other organizations besides the organization that's applying for the funds, that those partners of yours also are agreeing that if you are funded, that you will fully participate in the requirements and compliance of the grant. All right. Funding. So for the Early Childhood Block Grant, there is a 15% match requirement. 15%, that's 15% of the total ECBG budget. 5% of that match must be cash. The rest can be in kind. So keep that in mind when you're working on your budgets. And then there is, for indirect costs, there is an 8% cap. So total, 8% total of the ECBG budget. Something also to keep in mind is that all expenses, including salaries, materials, travel, and other expenses requested through the grant must be proportional to the time spent on the approved grant activities and direct services that are being offered as part of the grant activities. So please be very cognizant of making sure that your expenses are, most of your expenses are for direct services. We understand that there's, things that the grant requires that aren't direct services, like reporting and, common measures, etc. But we want you to strive to minimize those as much as you possibly can. So we can have most of the grant funds going towards those direct services to children and their families. Okay, so the ECVG budget, it must be, you must use the provided template. It's in Microsoft Excel. It's linked out on that webpage right now. It's very important that you review the instructions tab of the Excel template before starting. I will go over the budget at the end if we have a little bit of time left, just to make sure everybody understands how that template works. On that template, we ask that you be very explicit. So for like salaries and benefits, this is one that we ask that you do one line for each person that you'll be requesting ECBG funds for. In the short description, you'll put the position and employee name. And in the justification, it'll be the activities they will be performing that are grant related. And then we also ask that you do not lump expenses, like multiple expenses into one line. So if there's several different trainings, you split those out on 3 different lines and provide the information and the justification about what they are, what they're for. Okay, so on the Common App that Lindsay will go through the actual application online here after I'm done. Just some things to point out there. For the budget summary, we ask that you do not use amounts in this summary. This is supposed to be a narrative of what will be used in the grant agreement if funding is awarded. So please keep it simple but explicit. And I would say you could go through your budget and the justification and just kind of summarize those throughout your budget. Funds by type. This will be used as an at-a-glance for reviewers and should match column E of the budget summary tab of the budget template. So, and that's also in the Common App, but I just wanted to put it here too for another point of reference. And then on the budget tab of the Common App that's where you're going to include the sources of your cash or in-kind match and if it's confirmed or if it's pending. So if it's not, like, we understand that you are applying for a grant, so it may be hard for somebody to say, yes, we will give you those funds to match for that grant before you even have the award. So it is okay if it's pending, but if we would like to know if you've had those conversations yet to know if that is a source of funding that may be coming in for you all. Okay, so gap funding. So ECBG will provide supplemental funding to fill gaps not covered by other funding sources like state foundation aid, special education aid, federal Head Start, etc. So on the community needs tab, we are asking that you are explicit in describing existing funding sources that you may already have, and list the services and gaps in funding by each program being proposed. There's also a place on that tab for you to upload supporting documentation like financial statements that show the gaps in the funding. So we have that additional information. That is optional. It's not required, but it is available there to you if you'd like to provide that information. So USDs and early childhood block grant funding. So USD pre-K programs are eligible for both the Kansas Preschool Pilot, which KSDE administers, the Department of Education, and however, ECBG funds can only be used to fill gaps not covered by state foundation aid, special education aid, Kansas Preschool Pilot, etc. So if you are any USD that directly applies for ECBG funding or partners with another eligible applicant to receive ECBG funds, will need to complete the KSDE preschool revenue calculator. So that will be linked here. I have it highlighted because that is not currently out on the website yet. For KSDE hasn't posted that quite yet. I feel like it'll be posted this week because they're also launching their Kansas Preschool Pilot Grant this week. So what that is it's a revenue calculator that you enter in what your revenue is, all your revenue sources, and it will show us the gap in funding between your revenue and the budget that you add in there. So that will help us understand your gap so we can fund appropriately. And we will work very closely with the early childhood team at KSDE when reviewing these after you all have submitted your applications. So evaluation requirements for ECBG. So this is all per this Kansas statute, and that's linked here in the slide. So when we send those out, you'll be able to read that fund statute if you'd like. But as a mandatory condition of funding, every program must demonstrate that the program's design is supported by credible research, that the program as implemented will constitute best practices in the field, that the data is available to benchmark, evaluate the program's desired outcomes, and the capacity to appropriately implement and administer the programming. So just keep this in mind. I will say that the evaluation for early childhood block grant funds is pretty rigorous, but it does provide some pretty astounding information, which you can read, which I think it's linked in the RFP. You can go back and read the evaluation from 24-25. That is linked in the RFP. So it provides some pretty astounding information. So within the application, we will ask that you provide your program information by the type of program it is. And so I provided some information here on these slides on how you figure out what type of program you are providing. So you will review the program types PDF. That will provide information, definitions on each program types. And when I say program types, this is like your service types. We're talking like childcare, pre-K, mental and behavioral health for children, infrastructure for classrooms and teachers, case management, home visiting. So those are the different program types. So this will provide you the program types as defined by our evaluators at WSU. And this is how we then assign the majors that will be assigned to you if awarded for evaluating your program. So that's the program type stock. You'll make sure you review the list of common measures that are in that document that fits within your program. So you know what measures to look for. And then you will review there's a draft common measures guide out there for FY27. The reason it's still a draft is because we don't know almost a year and 8 months in advance what, if anything, may change with the developers of the measures that are listed there. We haven't had any issues recently where they've changed majorly between now and in the beginning of the grant term, but that's why we leave it as a draft. But for the most part, not much on here will change between now and the beginning of the term. As you are looking through that common measures guide, make sure you look at the cost. There's links in there to the developer's website to purchase the measures. Make sure you are budgeting for those within your budget for your programs. Common measures are set by the evaluation team at WSU. I kind of stated that already. And they're based on the program types being offered, as we just said. Make sure that your proposals submitted are for programs where the collection of the measures are feasible. If you're doing a home visiting program, but the kids are separated from the parents for an amount of time, then you're not going to be able to collect those measures because the parents currently don't have access to those kiddos. So make sure it is a program where the measures can be collected. On the application, please make sure to report the programs under the correct program type tab on the CommonApp application, and that you are only reporting on programs that you are requesting ECBG funds for. So we understand that you probably are doing a lot of wonderful things with other funding that you currently have. While that is very important, it is not something that we need to know about on this application unless you are requesting to, that you will be requesting ECBG funds for it. So maybe the upcoming year, if you're awarded, then you are going to start using ECBG funds for that program, or if you're starting a new program. So we only want to know about the programs that you are requesting funds for, ECBG funds for. When you are reporting the estimates of children and families for each program that will be, that you're requesting funds for, make sure you are realistic in those estimates. Because if funded, you will be expected to collect risk factor information and the applicable common measures for those estimated numbers. So be realistic. I always suggest to use the current year's enrollment when you are working on these applications. It does not, just because you say you're going to serve 500 kids, but in reality you may only serve like 50, it doesn't behoove you to say that on your application. So just be realistic with the numbers of children and families that you are serving. Okay, the target populations for the Early Childhood Block Grant. So this grant will serve children from birth up to kindergarten eligibility. So kindergarten eligibility in the state of Kansas means that they are 5 on 8/31/26. So when we're talking about 26/27 grant, if they are 5 years old on 8/31/26, they are not ECBG eligible. They are eligible for kindergarten, which means they're not eligible for ECBG. So we will serve children from birth up to age 4 on 8/31/26 and their families. And we request that priority is given to those 10 different categories listed there. I'm not going to list them all off. They are listed with definitions in the RFP. So you can look at those there. And that 50% of the population served must fall into at least one of the 10 categories. Again, it is required that if you are ECBG funded, that you collect information needed to calculate the risk of the children and their families being served with ECBG. So you're required to collect that risk factor information. And there, I have it linked in these slides as a note. So when you receive the slides, we have it linked to the information that we ask for risk that you'll be required to collect from parents. So you can see what we are going to be asking you to collect from your families. All right. And so the deadline for questions on the RFP is December 29th, 2025. You can submit all those questions via the technical assistance form that's linked here. It's also on that website where you registered for this webinar. That is the deadline to ask questions for the RFP. Obviously, if you are having technical issues or whatever while trying to submit through January 8th, you also submit those through there, and those will be supported through the 8th. The reason for the 29th deadline is just so there's time for us to provide you feedback on your question, and then you possibly time to apply it to your application. Applications are due on January 8th at 5 o'clock. There is, when Lindsay shows you the CommonApp, there is a fun little countdown timer there for you all. Well, it's not live quite yet, but there will be when it is live. And the application review period will be January 9th through March 27th. That includes scored external reviews that we will receive. So your applications will be reviewed by an external review team. And then we will get those scores and in order to make the recommended slate to the cabinet. The cabinet will meet, right now they're scheduled to meet the first Friday of April. That may change depending on what they decide at their upcoming cabinet meeting in December. That is Good Friday, so sometimes we change that date around to be respectful of those that may be doing family things on that day. So check into the December meeting to see when that April cabinet meeting will be, and then which is when they will approve ECVG award recommendations for these applications. Once they've awarded, the grant year will be July 1, 26 through June 30th, 27, which is on the state fiscal calendar. Any questions before I hand it over to Lindsay on any of these things? And I apologize. When I present, I cannot pay attention to the chat. Otherwise, this would take 5 days. So any questions that I may have missed, and it doesn't look like I have missed any.
Yeah, because I don't see the chat. Where's the chat at?
It should be in your Zoom at the bottom, I believe. I'm sharing my screen, so mine's in a different place right now.
Yeah, I don't see it.
But you can just ask me here if you'd like to, Keith.
Okay, enough thanks. I got a question because I work with Kids World with Margot Jones, and one of the things that we have applied for is our 501c3. Now, with this grant having such a short window and stuff, we now think that we're going to have to end up partnering in order for us to meet it because we don't anticipate having our 501c3 until April of 2026. And by that time, the application process is going to be over with, and we don't want to wait another 3 years before we can apply for this because that will make it 2028 before we can actually apply. So just wanted to know, how do we deal with that? Is that going to be okay for us to partner with a 501c3?
That is a good question, Keith, that I don't believe I've received before. So if you wouldn't mind submitting that question, I'm going to figure out the answer after this meeting, but if you want to submit that question as a TA question, and then we will get it posted back to you one-on-one, and then we'll also post it to the FAQs on that website, just so that everybody knows the answer to that question. But yeah, I want to make sure that I'm giving the correct guidance because I've never received that question before.
Okay, can you give me your email address and I'll go ahead and put that question in writing, please?
Yep, and it's actually the link right there that Lindsay put in the chat. Well, if you could, did you find the chat?
No, I haven't. Where is the chat at? Hold up. I'll take it back. I got it.
Okay, Lindsay put that link in the chat right there. If you want to click on that and submit that form with your question, then we'll get it. I'll respond directly to you, and then I will also respond as an FAQ. We'll get it added to the website.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. And then Pam McEwen asked if they could use their fiscal partner if they're not a 501c3, and absolutely. So I'm not quite for sure what organization you're with, Pam, but if you have a fiscal sponsor that's a 501c3 that would like to apply on your behalf, where you would be like a funded partner, then you are absolutely welcome to do that. Any other questions before I release it to Lindsay to do the CommonApp overview? Tamisha asked, can funds be used to cover part of the cost of a child attending the program for families who need assistance? So what I'm hearing is, can funds be used like for tuition assistance for families? Yes, they can be. So However you want to implement that program, you will write that in your application, and you are welcome to use those funds to support families in childcare costs.
Okay, to jump in with a quick walkthrough now.
I think that is good. And then I can continue answering questions in the chat while Lindsay's doing that. And yeah.
It won't take that long, and we can absolutely spend more time on questions as well. So if you think of more items, post them in the chat, and then maybe we can come back to address those live when I'm finished. So hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay O'Ryan. I work at KU Center for Public Partnerships and Research, and we help to support the Children's Cabinet on a variety of projects. We're connected with the Early Childhood Block Grant. Myself and I have a couple of colleagues who, if you have challenges or questions related to interacting with the Common App with your application and navigating that, our team are the ones that'll help respond to those technical assistance questions. So I will share my screen and do a quick walkthrough to help you orient. Okay, so I just wanted to start on the webpage that I linked a little bit ago. This is the Early Childhood Block Grant RFP webpage that's on the Children's Cabinet website. Just want to make sure you're oriented to this. So there's some key timeline and assistance and information on the right, and on the left is information about the grant opportunity, goals, target outcomes. You'll absolutely want to reference the RFP for the bulk of details about this grant opportunity, but there's a few highlights on this page to help orient as well. You can access under assistance, you can access the request form to submit RFP questions or Common App help desk questions. It's all the same form, even though I have two different links here. But those go to our team and to Christy. So we'll make sure that that gets seen by the appropriate person and responded to. Once we wrap up the webinar today, I just want to note we will post the recording and the slides here under Technical Assistance Webinars. So if you want to revisit this or have others that need to see this information, Christy had a lot of links on the slide, which should be referenced elsewhere as well, but those will be available soon. Later today, early tomorrow, we'll get those up as soon as we can. Scrolling down, I want to point out a couple more things. RFP and template downloads. This is where Christy was referencing a lot of those pieces of information. So the request for proposals, scoring rubric, budget worksheet, collaborative template, all of this information is available quick access here. A lot of these are linked in the RFP and also on the application. So there's multiple places to access these things, but this is a good sort of like home base to come back to for information. I'm going to jump a little bit further down. You can see there's already a good number of FAQ questions listed here. So if you have questions, you might glance through this list and see if your question has already been answered. But if not, of course, submit questions to that request form, and you'll definitely get a response. But if it's appropriate, those will also be added to the bottom of this web page. So next is apply here, and this takes you to the Common App if you click this button, and I'll test that just to make sure. Sure enough. On the Common App, my information is a little bit different than what you see because I have all of the access to manage and administer this website. But once you create, if you've never created a profile, you'll have to do that as your first step. So if you come here and you're not already a Common App user, that's your first step. Make a profile, add your information in there. So I can see that for me, I have my information over here. I can click on my profile. This is your first information. Again, it looks a little bit different if you're brand new. But what you're going to do is click on apply. And as you scroll down, you'll see there's a few different application forms here. You'll want to click on Early Childhood Block Grant and then click Start Application. I will note, go back just for 1 second, if you have submitted applications in the past, Hopefully it'll let me go back. They'll be listed down at the bottom, so you can reference old information that you have utilized for applications in the past. If you want to revisit any of that, that's available. If for some reason you're part of an organization that has completed an ECBG application in the past, but maybe that person is no longer with your organization, or you want to just have information transferred, we can change ownership of past applications. So if your role is now to apply for ECBG and you know another person has done that in the past, we can go back in and reassign past applications so that you have access to that for reference of the history. We can also change, there's a few different things. So if you have anything like that, submit a request through the technical assistance form and we'll help you the best that we can with that information. But if it's been submitted in the past, it's not gone, we can help navigate and find that for you. So on the ECBG application, the first thing that you're going to do, it's not live yet, but it will be very soon. So you'll select Early Childhood Block Grant, state fiscal year 2027. That will be the only one available. I, again, see a little bit more because I have administrator access as well. Once you do that, you'll see it opens up all of the information for the application. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good and pretty helpful. You can click on this option to download a blank application PDF for reference. So if you want to just kind of pull down all of the information and all the questions that you're going to be asked, this is a good way to take that offline so you can start looking through and gathering details. So if you click that link, it will load maybe slowly. Come on. It'll load a PDF, and this has all of the information and all the questions that are asked. Again, the formatting can be a little bit different than you'll experience it on the Common App itself, but it can be a helpful resource. As you scroll down, the first page will talk about what's your applicant type, making sure that you meet eligibility criteria. So pay close attention to that before you progress to make sure that you are actually eligible for this opportunity. If you have any questions about eligibility before you dive in deep, make sure to submit a request and ask questions about that. Contact information for you and your organization, and then your federal employer identification number.
Hey,
Christy
Lindsay.
talked. Yep.
Sorry, this is perfect timing actually, because somebody asked if you are using a fiscal agent, can they still use their own Common App account, or will the fiscal agent need to do it? And actually, this question right there, that is where you do that. So you can use so that your fiscal agent will need to be the one applying, but then they here will say, are they the same? So I'm sorry, I have that backwards. You can apply and you can just say that, no, you're not the same as your fiscal agent. And then you'll enter your fiscal agent information here. And then also your fiscal agent's federal EIN. So sorry, that was perfect timing.
It was a good pause. I'm not tracking the chat, but I will come back to that before I wrap up in case there's anything to readdress. Christy talked through a lot of the requirements, but you'll see as you move through the Common App, it will have information that you'll fill in, places to upload, templates, anywhere a template is requested, like for instance, under partnerships. If you scroll down, it will ask for your partner assurances form. So you can access that form here as well as back on the ECBG website. But once that is completed, you'll drag and drop or select that file to upload. Okay, so I would recommend you save often. So I haven't hit start application, but at the bottom of every page, you can say save and next, save and close, save often. Don't open this in multiple tabs. Sometimes because of information, this can get a little bit glitchy. So we have some reminders about that on here as well, especially on the start here page. So just make sure that you are minimizing, you're not hitting back too many times because I don't want you to lose information that you might have entered here. Always a good practice to, if you're writing a bunch of detailed information, write it elsewhere in some sort of word processing, copy and paste. That way, if something glitches on the website or something doesn't load or something doesn't save, you don't lose that information. So just helpful reminders. We are generally pretty happy with the Common App, but every now and then it acts up like many web-based things do, and I just don't want you to lose details. So let me pause and Christy, I think you've been tracking the chat. Anything that's popped up or anyone else have anything that would be helpful for me to walk through in this space?
I don't think so. No, nothing in the chat. If you wouldn't mind just going to the budget tab of the application, since I talked about that pretty lengthy in there. So this is where I talked about where you're going to put your funds by type. That's the at a glance that I was talking about for our external reviewers. They'll also see your budget, but this is kind of just when they're in the Common App reviewing, just an at a glance portion. And then the budget summary, that's where I said do not list amounts in there. It should be more of a summary of your justification column of your budget. So be cognizant of that. And then down below in the match requirements, that is where you're going to list all of your matching funding sources, et cetera, to meet the requirements of the grant. And then if you have any documentation, this is optional, match documentation that you want to share with us, you're welcome to upload it here.
Great. Any other places within the application you want to highlight, Christy, before I stop sharing screen?
Maybe the child, yeah, let's do the childcare and pre-K because that's where they will select.
Oh, it's mad at me. Let me go back to my
Okay.
application that we have
And while
started.
you do that, I'm going to answer Desiree's question. Will this grant allow an organization to expand services by building a center? And the answer to that is no. This grant doesn't provide funding for construction or building services. This is for direct services, educational services for children to make sure they are kindergarten ready when they turn 5. So no construction or anything like that. Okay, and then if you want to scroll down to like where it asks about USD funding or other funding right here. And you'll hit yes for pre-K. And then here is where you'll list just a short description of what you're funding with ECB or wanting to fund with ECBG. That is part of a USD. And then if you scroll down a little bit farther, that is where you will upload that revenue calculator, which KSC hasn't posted yet, but they said they were releasing KPP today, so it should be available soon. Hopefully today or tomorrow. And that was all. Thank you.
Great. I will stop sharing, but if any other questions come up that would be helpful to go back and look at any of those details, I will be happy to share.
Perfect. I think we have all the questions answered and everything. So I just want to take a few minutes to review the budget. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is what the budget will look like after you download it. When you get in there, you will want to enter your Common App application number. It's a 4-digit number. Once you start your application and save it, on that screen where Lindsay showed, if you've been in the Common App before and submitted an application, your number will be listed there on your pending application. So that's what you'll want to enter here. And then here is you'll enter the applying organization's name. That will flow through to everything. So I'm just going to put in some information there. Please review this instruction tab before you start working on your budget. We ask that you only use Microsoft Excel to complete the budget, preferably Microsoft 365 or 2021 and newer. Do not use Google Sheets or Apple Numbers. And we don't suggest you putting it on a SharePoint or cloud-based servers because it sometimes can mess up links. But I think technology has advanced a little bit and we don't have as many issues when you do that anymore. We always encourage you to save a copy on your hard drive and work from that. If you get a pop-up that says enable content or enable editing, make sure you enable that so you're able to edit it. And then this is the next part of this is navigating the budget forms, which is what I'm going to show you now. So after you get in here and you input your number and your name, you'll want to go to program 1, and I've already started the program budget for program number 1 here. As I said before, be pretty explicit with your descriptions. For the salaries and benefits, we ask that you put their name and their title. Here you will put their full salary, and then here is what you will put as the ECBG percent of their annual salary. So what are you requesting? Like if you are only requesting, if you have funding for half that teacher's salary, then you only need to put 50% here because you're funding the other 50% with another funding source. Or if you're funding the whole thing, then you'll put 100%. And then this will calculate out here on the ECBG column what it would be. So since I have 50% here, it's showing half of that here in the ECBG column. For the direct service, this is just a yes or no question. Are they providing a direct service? And like I said, we understand that some of your budgeted expenses may be for services that aren't directly providing for, children 0 to 5 and their families, but we understand that there are requirements of the grant for things like that. So just be honest here. Is it a direct service for kids and their families? Yes. If not, no. And then the justification, I just kind of put what that lead teacher does and what that support teacher does. It doesn't have to be long, but just explicit. And then I did the same for their benefits and taxes since that's on a separate line. Travel, just put each different type of thing that they're traveling to. Now, if it's like home visits, you don't need to put every child, but just put home visits separately from if they're traveling to a conference. For furniture and equipment, if you need to update the iPads, which are required for some of the assessments for some of the programs, just put updated iPads and put it there. Now, if you also need to purchase like a new computer for in the classroom, then we ask that you put it on a separate line. For supplies, this is where it's important to make sure you are budgeting for those required assessments that will be shown in that Common Measures Administration Guide. So you want to put those on separate line items here. My IGT seats versus the numeracy kits versus just general classroom supplies. We just ask that you put those separately. If you are contracting with anybody like those funded partners, possibly, you can list them here. This example is Audrey's going to come out. You're going to contract with her to come out and do your class observations that are required for the grant. And then here in professional development, there's that conference expenses for that travel that was listed above for that lead teacher and that assistant. Any other direct, I didn't put anything in here, but any other direct expenses would go here. Just be very, since this is just other, just make sure you're very, very explicit and about what those expenses are. The less questions we have over it, the better it is for you when we are reviewing, so we're not questioning things. And then you'll put your indirect expenses down here. You don't need to put a justification for indirect expenses, but if you want to put something just for your notes, you are more than welcome to. Now, on here, you'll see that for this program, there's a little like validation that has popped up, just saying, hey, this is more than 8% of this program's total ECBG budget that's shown up here. This is just a friendly validation. It's just for your use only. The only requirement is that your total budget, when it flows over here to the total budget, that it's less, and it will show you a validation here if it's not. So the program tabs, you can ignore that unless you're working with a bunch of funded partners and you want them to stay under that 8% too. You can ignore that. That's just a friendly validation. Now for cash match and in-kind match, you are also welcome to add line items for your cash and in-kind match if you want. If you do, so let's say the other half of her salary is covered by cash. We can input that there, and that will, and that will pop up here. That'll sum up here. You are welcome to do that for each line, so you can keep track of your sources, et cetera, and you can use a justification column to keep track of that. However, it is not required. There's a couple of options here. If you just want for each program to give us a total cash match and in-kind match, you can do that here, and you can override that formula there, and you can input 17,500 as your cash match for that, or, vice versa for in-kind. You can do that there, and it will pull over. So, to the budget summary tab, and I'll show you that next. So once you get your budget done for all your different programs, and again, we need one budget per program, just so we know exactly how much funding you're requesting for each of your programs being proposed. They will all pull over into the budget summary tab here. So you'll see your program and your partner. And if you have a partner, if you don't have a partner, you don't have to enter anything in there. And then it'll pull in each subtotal of each line item in here, along with your cash match that you entered. Now you'll see that, okay, so I overrode that formula, but it's still showing here. That's okay. It's going to show the higher of the two. So if you left, like I left that 17,500, it's going to show the higher of the two, or since it was the same, it'll show that. So if I enter 0 here, or if I enter, let's say $20,000 here, it'll change to the $20,000 cash match. Now, if you don't want to list cash or in-kind match on any of your programs, you don't have to do that. You don't have to use those columns at all. You can literally just enter in your total right here, and that will override everything. And that's what will pull into your total budget tab. So I just wanted, that's a new feature of this year. We do not, we do need to know, like, while we do need to know the sources of your cash match, we do not need to, they do not need to be listed as a line item in a certain category for our purposes. We just need to know that they're not state or federal funds that are being used, and that they are not being used to meet a requirement of another grant that you have. So they're solely being used to fulfill this grant requirement for ECBG, and they're not state or federal funds. So that is how the budget works. Once you get all your programs in there, double check that your budget looks good here, and then on your summary tab, and then this should also pull in here. Again, if you're not meeting your indirect, if you're over your indirect costs, it'll show here. If you haven't met your match, which it looks like we have, I will show you that here. it'll show you your match up here if you're not meeting it, or if it's not met. This is, again, this is just friendly. You only have to meet the match on the total budget. So if you're not getting a validation here, you are A-okay.
Christy, we've got
So
a
when I-
couple questions. Is it okay if
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
first is it possible to receive funding for some of the listed programs on your application and not others? Or is it all or nothing?
Is it, I gotta read it. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry, thank you. Yes, it's possible that the cabinet decides to fund some, but not all of the programs applied for. So that is a possibility. I always encourage, like, I always say to apply for it. The only thing that, I mean, if you don't apply for it, then we can't give it to you. So I always say apply for it. And then somebody asked, can we use the fund to offset the kid pre-K cost by paying for the total cost of the year? Can we give scholarships to existing kids in our school? If it's, so can you fully fund a child's pre-K? Is that the question? Keith, I don't think I quite understand that question, the first question. You can use ECBG funds to, the second question was, can we give scholarships to existing kids in our school? And you can use ECBG funds to provide scholarships to families to offset the cost of childcare.
Okay, so then we can do, then that answers the first question.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
Hop off of that question, I guess, with like offsetting, I guess. I'm thinking if we were like administering scholarship funds, and some of them come from the block grant and that person's paid through the block grant, can we leverage and use additional funds as cash match? And then the kids who receive those additional funds outside of the block grant, would we still want to count them in our numbers? Does that make sense?
But they're not ACBG funded?
They wouldn't be. The person administering the scholarships would be, if that makes.
So if we're only funding the person administering,
Well, you'd be funding the person administering the scholarships and some scholarships. We're thinking we could expand this program or offer additional scholarships from a different funding source that is local and part of our cash match. I knew it was a tricky question.
I think I would probably suggest that if you could, just so it's cleaner for the evaluation and for everything, I would suggest that you use your cash match on the person administering the scholarship program, and then apply for ECBG funds for those scholarships.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
more clear about who the ECBG funds are supporting.
Okay. That's helpful.
Somebody asked what priority is given to new projects versus previously funded programming. And I'm wondering if maybe you can clarify, like when you say new projects, like totally new projects that like would have startup costs for FY27, or if you're talking about like you're currently being funded from something else, but maybe with some ECBG funding, you could expand that for FY27. And you like are maybe a new grantee versus an old grantee. Is that what you're asking? I want to make sure I'm answering this correctly.
This was restated as, how are new projects prioritized relative to programs that have received funding before?
Yep, and that's what I'm still. That's what I would like clarified. Are you talking about organizations that are currently funding and are reapplying for funding, or are you talking like totally new projects that maybe aren't even up and running, and they would be new for FY27? It is competitive, so I will say that anybody, yep, okay. So anybody, that's what I was getting ready to answer. Anybody that is a new grantee versus an old grantee, it is competitive, so it is open to everybody. We really look at your applications, to see where we best could, where we feel that ECBG funds are best, would best be put. So there's no preference over old grantees and new grantees. It would be very beneficial. I would suggest that you make sure you understand the common measures. And so when you are that part of your application, it'll be very important that you understand the common measures. So I would review that common measures guide and the program types, and submit any questions that you have over those to that TA form to make sure you understand those, because that is big part of compliance and making sure we're meeting the requirements of the statute.
Well, let me ask you a question,
Sure.
Christy. So in our community, we already know that there's one, possibly two, grantees that have been awarded. Would you guys be considerate of as adding additional, especially if the need is there? Because one of the things about where we're located at in Northeast Wichita and stuff is that there's not enough money to be able to support the needs. And even if
Sure.
you have two other grantees that are awarded, or possibly just one that are awarded and stuff, it still does not cover the total cost of need in that particular area. So I guess my question is that how do you get around you guys saying, hey, well, we already have somebody in that area that's receiving funding, or we have two people in that area receiving funding? How do we get around that being a new grantee?
So we have added additional grantees to areas where we, already, like, we also added more grantees to an area that we had the year prior. So that's not something that's out of the realm of things that we do. You may also look into partnering with a current grantee if that also, like, you can reach out to them and see if they would be interested in being a partner. That's another option too. So we encourage both ways, however you decide to do it.
Can we partner with a USD?
Yes,
Okay.
you can. When you partner with a school district, it is depending, I don't know what services you're providing, but there's a little bit more scrutiny there just because they are a school district and they already are receiving state foundation aid and things like that. So that's where that revenue calculator would come in, et cetera. So.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Just looking at options.
Sure. somebody asked, can you go over reporting and DAISY requirements? So the requirements, I said during the slideshow that the evaluation for this grant is pretty rigorous. However, it does provide really, really good information for us. So the DAISY requirements, as far as like putting children and caregivers into DAISY, we need to have all their risk factor information for any kiddo that is or their family that's receiving early childhood block grant funded services. Those are linked in the slides that we will share out. The links to those risk factor and demographics information are linked in there. So once we send the slides out, you can look. It's going to be in the notes part of the slides, but those will be in the slides there. And then I would suggest really looking at the common measures guide. If you know a program type that you're looking into, I would check out the program type guide, then figure out what program types your services that you're applying for would fall under, and then check out the common measures guide for the listed common measures that would be required for that program. So you know what measures that you would be required to administer. I will say that any measure that we do needs to be completed at least twice. If it is my IGD measures, all of those are done 3 times per year, required to be done 3 times per year. And this is just so we have outcomes in order to be able to provide an evaluation. So if you have any questions over that after you go through that Common Measures Administration Guide, feel free to put those in the TA form and submit those, and we will get anything clarified for you. Anna asked, as a new grantee, would there be a benefit in starting small with one community to show capability versus starting by showing our capacity to serve lots of communities for a greater impact? It is up to you, Anna. You can start small or go all in. I will say that, again, you may, while the evaluation for this is pretty rigorous, so you may look at what would be required for the common measures to be in compliance with the grant, to make sure that you aren't overextending yourself when you apply. So that may be something to think about. And again, if you have any questions over the evaluation, feel free to put those in the technical assistance form and send those over, and we can get those clarified for you. Vicki asked, how important is long-term sustainability for program beyond the initially funded grant cycle? We would love that it's sustainable, right? But that's not actually a question that I don't believe that's a question that we ask in the application. So for the importance of this application, I think it's more important that you can provide services by the first quarter of the grant, and that so you can then be in compliance with the common measures so we can evaluate your program. I think that's the most important part about being in compliance with this grant if funded. Any other questions that I missed?
Last question from me. On the programs that are caregiver focused, so like some of those like case management and home visitation programs, do we, for those, the tracking on them, we do that for all of the children in the family under the age of 5, correct? So if they have multiples, even if we are seeing them for maybe this specific child, if they have a 3-year-old, we would need to collect ASQs, et cetera, on that as well.
Like, do you need to report that in the application? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, in the application, yeah, when we're figuring out our numbers, and then also when doing the actual data collection on that.
So you're saying like if you're supporting a family that has like 2 kids under the age of 5.
Yeah, or maybe they come to us like, a prenatal family, and so we're serving them prenatal and with that child, but then there's an older child also under the age of 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, you'll want to report both. And then you will need to collect measures. Like if you are granted the funding, you will be required to collect measures on both, knowing obviously that prenatal child you won't be able to collect measures on until they're
Yeah.
at least a month old. So
Okay. I think that answers my question. So we should be really thinking of like whole family, and any child under the
yeah,
age of 5 when we're trying
for
to
any of
our
the
numbers.
family, yeah, for any of the family focused programs, definitely. Like it'll be so like case management, home visiting, parent education, you'll want to be thinking about whole family. And then any kiddo within that family that's under the age of 5 is what you'll be required to collect measures on. Understanding they could have older siblings too. But the focus obviously for these grant funds should be the kiddos 0 to 5.
Okay, that's helpful.
Anything else? You guys have had a lot of good questions today. Well, I'm not seeing anything else pop up. So I'm gonna say this was a really good webinar, good kickoff to the grant application. And we will get this live this afternoon for you all. Again, if you have any questions, please submit them via the TA form on the website. And we will get those answered for you throughout the grant application period. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.